One of the other topics that we discussed that would be going on this time of year is weaning young foals. And we wanted to chat about some things, different types of weaning, what might be stressing horses during weaning, and some key elements that we should take into account when we're weaning. Um, what is weaning? At the very basic, it is a separation of the mare from that nursing foal. It breaks that nursing bond. So then that foal needs to go from replacing the nutrients that they may be getting from milk to its own food. And so we need to make sure that that foal is fully adjusted to any grain concentrate or supplement that they're going to get prior to weaning. And after weaning, then our goal is that that mare quits producing milk and she can go back to doing, whether she's going to continue to get rebred, she's going to go off to be a riding horse, whatever, you can take her to be her own entity. I often get asked, what is the ideal weaning age? Um, and there's a pretty wide spread. But if you think about the lactation curve of the mare really drops off after 3 months. And the fetal liver stores of minerals, copper and zinc that are during the last part of pregnancy, that mare will fortify the fetal liver with these minerals, because mare's milk is really not that high in mineral content. We're getting calories and protein out of it. And so by about 3 months of age, all of those minerals that were stored in that foal's liver are also depleted. So that's when in the wild that foal would have been consistently eating pasture, grasses on its own. So really you can nutritionally wean them anytime after 3 months of age. It's more typical that foals are weaned about 5 to 6 months of age. The earlier you wean them, obviously they're not getting the socialization and the manners and the that kind of thing from the mother. But there are cases where the mare nutritionally she's not able to manage that foal. I'm working with a case right now where the mare is on stall rest, so we're going to wean that foal early so that it can go off with another herd of horses and have a normal life while the mare is in stall rest. The mare, she'll continue producing small quantities of milk through 8 to 9 months, but as I mentioned, the lactation curve really drops off right around 3 months of age. What do you need to do before you get into weaning? What do you need to do? Well, you want to make sure that you've got a strong, healthy foal, and you want to make sure that you're anything that might stress that foal, vaccinations, deworming, trimming the feet, all of those things are taken care of so that once you wean the foal, we can put as little stress on them as possible. What things can we do to decrease weaning stress? Well, depending on the size of your facility, if you've only got one foal, then the social aspect of keeping the foal with the same herd mates really doesn't apply. But if you've got several foals that you're weaning, you might have a bit of a spread in age, but it's best to wean them all at the same time so that you can keep them all together. Move the mares away, not the foals, again, so we're not moving the foal to a new environment. Maintain you've developed a routine of visit, going out, your schedule of contact with those animals, and maintain that schedule through after weaning. And nutrition, as I mentioned, whatever you're going to feed the foals post-weaning, they must be adapted to it and eating the full ration and comfortable with it prior to weaning, so that's just one less thing that we're going to change. Things that can occur if we don't take a lot of proactive measures and they suffer from a lot of stress. We'll see them lose weight. They don't want to eat. We They might have get a lowered immune system if they're not eating, behavioral issues. Sometimes they get aggressive. But one of the big things that we have to be cautious of is kind of troughs and valleys in growth. We want to, when young growing horses, you want to have a nice, clean growth curve that doesn't have big blips in it. And so if we had a lot of weaning stress, then we would see a lot of slow growth. And then as they started to come out of that, we might see a rapid growth phase, and that could be detrimental to their growth. There are different methods. There's two basic methods, gradual and abrupt. I think most of us are most familiar with that abrupt method where you just take the mares away. But it really depends on the number of foals you have, the amount of people you have help on your farm, and the size of your farm. It's great if you can take the mares, 5 miles away so that your foals don't ever hear them, but if you've just got a small farm, that's just not practical. So gradual weaning, mares and foals are separated and reunited several times a day. This is probably one of the methods that we're less familiar with. Eventually, the mare and foal are kept in an area where they can see each other, they can hear each other, but they're separated. And so some people will call it fence line weaning. They're on opposite sides of the fence, and it just excludes the nursing, but they still have that social interaction. It's used more commonly on smaller operations where we don't have a lot of foals. Maybe we've got one or two, and we can do this. It's labor intensive because we're taking the mare away for a few hours here and a few more hours, and we're gradually building it up. It's very labor intensive. You're not going to see this on the larger farms. Larger quarter horse or thoroughbred farms just aren't going to do this. Obviously you have to make sure that the fences are very safe, whatever the barrier between the mare and foal, because at the beginning, obviously, the foal can be a little stressed. Abrupt weaning, what we're more familiar with, we're completely separating them. You're taking the mare to a completely different part of the farm. And as I mentioned, if you have a small farm, taking away the visual contact, you may be able to do that, but we can all still hear them screaming, and that really stresses out those mares and foals. So on the larger operations, maybe they have multiple facilities, or they just have a really large area, they can move them away, and we're taking them completely away from the nursing aspect, the visual, and they can't hear them. To minimize stress, because this is probably the one that can cause the most stress, is, again, you're going to take the mare away and keep the foal in the same paddock. And this is going to happen in facilities where we're weaning large quantities of foals at the same time. So we're keeping all those foals together. So they cling together with their herd mates, and that can decrease stress. And again, we're always maintaining the same routine. Horses are routine animals. Even when they're adults, if you're late to get out there to feed them in the afternoon, they are pouring, they're kicking. They know that you come at 5 o'clock every day, and if you don't come till 5:15, they are cranky. And we can decrease stress in those young babies if we set up a routine prior to weaning, and we maintain that routine throughout weaning, and obviously the feeding as well. Pasture weaning, as one of the types of abrupt weaning, where you can actually have a large group of mares and foals, and the older ones, you'll take the older foals mares out at first, remove a few mares, wait a few more days, remove a few more mares, wait a few more days, remove a few more mares. That can decrease stress as well. But again, it's a little bit more labor intensive than just taking all the mares out at once. More common in larger facilities where there is a lot of help, and we can keep those babies together. Sometimes they'll even leave a gelding or a non-nursing mare in the field just to be their buddy, kind of the den master of the foals. You can do the same thing, but using stalls. So you'll put the mares and foals in the stalls, and then you leave the foals in the stalls, take the mares completely away, one foals per stall. And this is really good if you've got people, and you can then get in there and be handling the foals to decrease the stress, and then slowly start to turn them out as well. Again, it all depends on the facilities that you have. If you have 10 foals that you want to wean, do you have 10 stalls that you can put them in? It's not necessarily new research, but there's research to suggest that there's been research looking at music in all different stressful scenarios in horses, whether it's a competitive barn, whether it's riding horses. But this particular study looked at weaning stress, and if you play music in the barn, can it decrease their stress? And they measured heart rate, and certain types of music can certainly decrease heart rate. I've looked at other research studies where they showed radio versus opera music versus rock music, and whether that changed the heart rate on performance horses in a barn. And I think the radio was better, just the calm voices versus music, but that's just a little bit of interest.